It was September 10th. It was a weekend. I was here in the studio working on a project myself. And all of a sudden I received this phone message from Brian Rothschild, who's the director of the John Lennon Educational Tour Bus. And it was like, Wu-Tang is gonna be on tour and they actually need an engineer. Are you in? And I'm like, wait, what? Okay, well, that sounds quite interesting. I'm in.
I would love for the bus to follow us on tour. Maybe I'll make some new Wu-Tang tracks, but if not, I got a great album that I need to mix and I need a good engineer.
RZA was gonna be on tour with the Wu-Tang and Nas throughout the US and Canada, and RZA wanted to mix his orchestral album they recorded prior to the tour with the Colorado Symphony Orchestra, his own compositions, and then he basically needed a guy that would be capable of mixing the Colorado Symphony Orchestra album by RZA within 10 days and most likely in Dolby Atmos as well. That's all I knew back then. 10 days later, from the initial message I received, I'm flying all the way to LA, from the airport all the way to Westlake Pro Audio in LA, where the actual bus was being rewired and the new Dolby Atmos system was being integrated. With Jeff Sobel, who's the chief technology officer of the bus, we spent, I think, 5 to 6 days in LA at Westlake, working hard in making sure that the studios were ready for the tour. And then we kind of rushed out of the shop because we had to be in Minneapolis by October 7th. There was a lot of mileages to cover. But, to make things even extra hard, the bus itself broke down on day 2 while we were traveling. And on day 3, we both got COVID, Jeff and I. Thanks to our professional driver, we managed in the end to actually make it to Minneapolis on October 7th, late in the evening. And that was a show day for them. Straight after the concert, RZA, this must have been around midnight, walked onto the bus. So together with Jeff, we received him on board of the bus. We showed him around and he dropped a big bomb on me. So it's like, this is the drive, this is the recordings of the Colorado Symphony Orchestra I did before this tour. And this is gonna be my orchestral album. And I would like you to actually mix it in Dolby Atmos, and I wanted to have it ready by the time you guys leaving us, so within 10 days. This is the huge Pro Tools session. Please try to organize all of the songs in different projects so that we can start mixing these, and every night I'll be coming by and I will be checking and running revisions with you. On the first night, I spent countless hours editing this massive Pro Tools project, create all of these different Pro Tools sessions for all of the songs. And the day after, it was a short trip from Minneapolis to Chicago. We ended up in the big arena of the Chicago Bulls. That was quite chilling for me to see all of that. Day 1, I started to work on the very first track that I would have a complete take of. All of the songs were handed in to me at 24-bit 96 kilohertz. We are talking about orchestra of 70 pieces. The mic techniques that were used to record the orchestra was the usual Decca 3, expanded with 2 extra mics. So I would have my 5 mics array, and then a bunch of different spots, sometimes poorly placed on instruments. First challenge was actually to make sure that per song I would check the score, because sometimes I think on 2 or 3 songs I actually had to comp takes because there were no complete takes of the song. And comping an orchestra is not an easy thing. So there were a lot of things going on. I would wake up every single day in a different place, most likely inside a venue, get a coffee going, and start mixing, pretty much. I had no more than 8 hours a day, if you exclude the traveling and all of that, to basically mix an entire song in Dolby Atmos from scratch. That was the challenge right there. The first stop after Chicago was Winnipeg in Canada. We already had 3 or 4 songs in, so things were going pretty smooth. I started to grasp more and more on what RZA wanted to do with these pieces. There were a lot of connection points aesthetically with even Morricone, so we discussed about that, all of those cinematic tunes that Morricone did in the past. And every single day we would progress. He would come on board, I would play for him, he would be sitting in the sweet spot, and he would be telling me, that's great, change this, change that. We wanted to have a blackboard or a whiteboard where we would put sticky notes of each one of the songs, and by the time they were done, he wanted to have this visual check. Every single time we walk on board, it's like, okay, we got 11 songs to mix, we are 3 mixes in, there's kind of 7 left. He left me a lot of freedom. But at the same time, you gotta know, RZA is a very, very smart guy. And he's a very knowledgeable guy as well. He's very humble, but very knowledgeable and very ambitious as well. So normally this kind of work, he would take you months. But the deal with him was like, man, I don't wanna go to any other studio to finish off the album. By the time you guys leave the tour, the album needs to be done, at least in Dolby Atmos. I approached the mix in Dolby Atmos in a very traditional way. It's a big orchestra. In specific sections of the songs, there are specific elements, they are kind of talking to each other. So instead of only having, this, let's say, static presentation of the orchestra in a 360 environment, we also started to play with movements. So if there's a section where maybe a violin is having a dialogue with a flute, well, depending what sort of dialogue it is, we might actually move this element up front, high up. And there were moments where we maybe wanted to have the bass present here in your chest, but there were other moments where we actually wanted to have it just under your seat. So with the use of these 12 speakers around us, we actually managed to make it extra cinematic. From Winnipeg, we went to Calgary, Edmonton, and then we went all the way down to the US from the west side. So our last show day with them, it was in Portland. And at that point, I was just done with the last song. Of course, there were also all of the stereo mixes to be done. And I was very surprised to be, again, picked up by the man himself, RZA, who said, man, you did an incredible job. You did something that most likely, it would have taken way longer. Why don't you take these projects and you mix and master them in Amsterdam, in your studio? So I did all of the Dolby Atmos mixes while on tour with Wu-Tang. A couple of weeks later, I got back to the Netherlands in Amsterdam in my own studio with the very same speakers, by the way, that we have on board of the bus, the Channel 8350 ones in this case with sub. How much time did I have to get that done? 5 days. So things were getting even faster by then. If you really think about it, it's quite crazy that the man who's one of the most successful hip-hop producer is known for being the guy that samples stuff, packs it together in a different way, and then created a genre out of that. He went from that, sampling stuff, to actually writing music that a full-blown orchestra would play for him. This is the kind of the full 360 circle artistically that kind of RZA went through. You need to listen to this album both in stereo and Dolby Atmos because this is something pretty unique.